Welcome to everybody on board. Now, you should be able to see my screen at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Preferences and I'm going to share my GoToWebinar control panel with you as well. So what you'll see in the right hand side is the GoToWebinar control panel, and I'll continue to share this as we proceed through the session. So first of all, welcome, thank you very much. Now this session is it's a basic session, an introduction to GoToWebinar, and I'd like to just show you first of all how the control panel actually works on the right hand side. So what I'd like to do is, first of all, at the very top, you can see Audience View. Yeah, you should be able to see that at the top right hand side. So what we have there is it can give you a view of what the audience is actually looking at. Now that's really useful if you don't have a second laptop that you can't always check what people are able to look at. I tend to have a second laptop as well, just so I'm logged in as someone else actually, just so I can actually work out what people can see, how the resolution looks, that sort of thing. So I'm just going to hide that just now. Now this bit here tells me that I'm on air and I'm showing my screen, which is what we would hope to see. Yeah. So I can show my screen or I can pause it if I like. And what you can see is I can swap, showing different things. I can show my Skype, you don't really want to see that. What we can do is pause showing my screen as well. So if you're just ready to start the webinar but not quite, what you can do is start the presentation but then pause the screen. And all that happens there is when people arrive for the webinar, they will get the front screen. That means you can do other things on your screen but you're still broadcasting. That gives people a sense of comfort that the webinar is due to begin. You can stop showing the screen as well. Now, I'm actually recording this session. I'm going to upload it to YouTube and I'll do that later. So, but in order to do that, you've got some settings over here in the right hand side. Now this is one of the key panels. I don't know if you can see that. There's a key preferences GoToWebinar, and when you click on settings, it allows you to see what the recording state actually is. I'll show you that as we proceed through the session. We've got audio here as well, so you can do a sound check if you like. So if you click on that, it does come up with some options over your headset and your microphone. It's worth checking those. I've got some advice on microphones a bit later. Now we've got the dashboard. So this shows me that 42% are attentive, and we've got 13 people who are online at the moment. I've got some polls which we will go on to in a little while. Now hands raised, attendees are able to ask questions if they like. We don't have any at the minute, but if you ask a question, those will pop up down the bottom at the right hand side. There's a question there. You can see who's asked a question. So what we can do is pop that out if you like. You can undock it. I don't see any questions there at the moment. For some reason I've got a Java update. What you can do so you don't get any notifications is you can actually, if you go to the charm but at the bottom, then if I end the show, you go to the charm bottom at the end, what you can do is go to settings and then you get notifications, and it will hide the notifications for an hour. So that's what we could do if we wanted. So I will do that so I don't get any problems throughout. So we've got 13 attendees, so I can see exactly who's online. So I'm expecting some funny cat pictures from Mark, so you can look for those on Twitter. Hashtag #SQLLolCat. So I can see, it tells you information about each of the attendees. So let's say we look at me. So there I am there. I am muted by an organiser. I'm actually logged in twice. So you see me here as a member of staff, and that's the email address I've used to log into. And you see the attendees, we've got 13, so we've got Elizabeth from PASS. Hello Elizabeth. And there's me. That's my second login, and I'm logged in using a PASS email address. I've actually got a second laptop next to me. I've got a little Surface, and I'm using that so I can see exactly what you guys are watching on the screen while I proceed. I've muted everybody. I could invite you to speak if you so wished, but for the moment we'll keep going. So that's the attendees that we see online. So I've got some polls, and I'll show you how to use those a bit later, and we've got the chats down here as well, so that if people type messages you can pick them up in here usually. Now when I click and see whose hands are raised, if I go to the top I can sort, and I can see that Thomas has got his hand raised for 2 minutes. Oops, where's it gone? Hand is not raised. Okay. Let's see, we should be able to sort that. There's no hands up, it says. Okay, so what I will do is, we can actually use webinar as well. We don't tend to use those in the virtual chapters. I think the reason for that is sometimes people's network is not very good, and of course it's got to spend time processing the video. But if you want to show your webinar, what you can do, put questions back in. If you find that you're running the webinar and you don't have everything available to you, if you go to the View button, what you will get is a list of options, and it will be able to tell you exactly which parts you can see down here. Yeah. So if you're missing any of these, it's possible that you've just not clicked the box so that you see everything. Okay, so what we can do is preferences. Now I can't share this one with you, but the one that you might want to see is webcam. So you can show webcam as well, so you can keep talking if you want, and then people can see you. Okay, so what I'll do is we'll come back to this. I just wanted to go through an overview of the VCs and to show you some more things that you could do that would help the webinar to go a bit more smoothly. One thing I would say is when your VC session is in progress, I tend to mute myself here with the small microphone button. So if you press that button it goes grey. That means that you've muted yourself. I also have a microphone, which means that it has a mute button on it. I tend to use both just to make sure. So I could share my webcam if I wanted as well. Connecting, see the webcam. So if people go to their webcams, they should be able to see me there if you want. We won't bother doing that, just simply because it's me, and I'm sure you've got better things to look at. So this one means people can see the screen, and you can click that to stop screen sharing if you like. So we'll proceed through the presentation, and then I've got some other tips that will be applicable to actually running the virtual chapter. So let's have a look. So one thing you can do when you're presenting is if you right click in presenter view, go to pointer options, go to arrow options, is that you can actually hide your pointer. So that makes the presentation look a bit more smooth because people can't see your mouse then. So what actually is a webinar? It's station WIFM, and really that means what's in it for me. So sometimes you can do an audience profile worksheet, and that basically is who you try as the virtual chapter leader. You can ask yourself, well, who is my intended audience going to be? Now sometimes with the virtual chapters, I totally understand it's hard to get speakers sometimes, and I've done this in the past, I just will sometimes take any speaker, so I've got a session. Even if it's a BA session or something like that, and it probably sits somewhere else. I only do that if I'm desperate, and I don't recommend it, but I do try and get a speaker who is relevant for the virtual chapter. because otherwise if it becomes a bit of a hodgepodge, you're not really sure then what your unique selling point is. So what you can do is have a think about who is it you're trying to reach. I'm just going to hide the control panel. You see up here I've got an audience view. That's how you can tell if people are bored or not. So percent of attendees that are looking at the screen and percentage of attendees. Everyone's 100% looking at the screen, which is good, but when people start to tail off a little bit, it's probably time to move on to the next slide, which is what we'll do. So what's the value in the actual webinar itself? Now, again, I've put some options at the right hand side, and I will share these slides after the session. But this will help you to help your speaker. Sometimes I find speakers don't actually know whereabouts how to start writing a title or an abstract. So this sort of structure might help them to see exactly this. If they can answer these questions, then the abstract will tend to fall out of that. Okay, so GoToWebinar has got lots of audio options to help you engage, and it also gives you you've got some suggestions here on how to prepare for your virtual chapter session. Now, I took these off a manual which I found via the GoToWebinar website. I can send round the link for this as well. I will share the slides anyway. But these will give you an ideas for a structure when you're trying to prepare the webinar. So I can see there's a hand raised. So let's have a look and see what that says. Here's the question panes. Mark is desperate to make me laugh during the webinar, and he succeeded. When you've invited me to speak, I presume you're desperate. No, absolutely not, Mark. You gave one of the absolute best 24 hop sessions I have ever heard, and I still stand by that, and I would love to have you speak for me again. So, and I will twist you around to make sure that you do it. I presume I'm not getting pictures of funny cats at the moment, but I look forward to those. But this sort of structure will help you to see exactly the sort of things to think about when you're preparing your virtual chapter session. Now, the way that I've sort of run the virtual chapters, the first thing I did was I looked at the virtual chapters and I tried to work out which ones needed extra help. So sometimes that involved maybe just getting speakers. Sometimes it involved perhaps a change of leadership simply because people weren't able to do it anymore. So I really spent the first 6 months looking after the virtual chapter portfolio and trying to clean up items like that. I should say that Denise McInerney, who ran the virtual chapters before I did, she did an awesome job and she left me a very good clear structure that I could pick up. And she spent a lot of time making a lot of copious notes for me, so I'm very grateful for that. And so now I try to clean things up. What I'm trying to do now is focus more on the leadership and trying to see how we can support them. The way that I believe that leaders work is I tend to not micromanage. So if I don't hear from you, I tend to leave people alone. I just assume that they're okay and I don't want to pester them. I'm not your mother or an elderly aunt. I don't want to keep hassling people. I do think that everybody does a great job. So I tend to respond if you come to me with an issue or a question, or if the PASS HQ team respond with something. The reason for that is maybe quite a European thing. I tend to leave the virtual chapter leaders and the co-leads to lead, and my expectation is they will want to put their own stamp on the virtual chapters and that they will want to drive those. So I have been hands off if I think a VC's gone well, and I've tried to get involved if it's needing some support. So that's how I've done it. So for example, this sort of structure will help you to think about preparing your virtual chapter session. So what's different about a webinar is it's all about the content. So sometimes I find speakers who I think are pretty good when I see them in person. Then when it comes down to the webinar, you get they don't do so well. And the reason for that is they tend to rely when they're speaking on a lot of non-verbal cues. And they also spend time doing a lot of filler talk as well. So when I hold a session, like I did this one, I tend to dive straight in and I don't even bother to introduce myself, although I should probably do that. So it's all about your voice, and your voice is a bit like a radio in that aspect, that's what people hear and that's what they engage with. Sometimes the question I get asked is, when is the best time to hold a webinar? Now this is what GoToWebinar suggests themselves, the organisation. The best webinar days of the week are Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and we've got 10 to 11 PST and between 1 and 2 EST. So I've tried to go for that time slot. There is an art and a science to webinars. Now, I'm just going to move this in a little bit, this control panel. There we go. That's it. So there's 3 elements of face-to-face communication, and this study is quite a famous study done by Mehrabian, I can't see that properly, 1967, who said the first one obviously is words, the second one is tone of voice, and the third one is non-verbal communication. So webinars remove non-verbal visual cues, so you have to make up that difference somehow. And the reason that we can do that is we can add emotion to our voice, use inflections, speed and pause, and we change the tone. So what's in the presenter's audio value chain? What's it actually made up of? Well, the first piece is the technology, the computing platform, and there's nothing puts off people a webinar more than poor audio. So if they can't hear it, then they tend to disappear at that point. And you might see people start to, you see the attendee list start to go down. So the computing platform, slow processor speeds and lack of RAM and high CPU utilization can cause dropped words and robotic sounds. Yeah, so what you can do is broadcast using the fastest computer you have available to you, close any applications you're not using, and try to make sure you're using the latest browser as well. I've actually used, when I use GoToWebinar, I always use a wired connection. Just plug it straight into the router, then I feel more confident instead of relying on the Wi-Fi on its own. The internet connection is really important, obviously. The network speed affects the audio quality. You end up with a latency effect, and that can be quite difficult to manage as well. So Citrix recommends a download of 2 and an upload of 1 as a minimum. There's free speed tests you can look at online. So the microphone is actually really important as well. So some people hold webinars using their telephone. We don't recommend that. USB microphones which use USB have got larger diaphragms in them, so they capture the nuances a bit more. So USB generally is recommended. I don't think you have to have anything particularly fancy. That might apply if you are doing a webinar series for Pluralsight or something like that, but for the virtual chapters the sound tends to come across okay. You're not doing anything musical, so USB is just fine. So do's and don'ts over sound. This probably sounds obvious, but you'd be really surprised how often people break these things. So broadcasting in a quiet room, I've held sessions before and I've tried to speak to the presenter and I can't hear them because they're doing it in their office. So be aware of barking dogs, pets that need fed, bribery if there's children around. That's what I tend to use. My son likes Toblerone, so I just ask him to give me some time while I do the webinar. And he knows more about SQL Server than any other 9-year-old probably. And he loves American accents because he hears me on calls quite a bit. So furnishings absorb sound because you'd be surprised how often people drop things. So notifications tray, switch it off, which is what we did. Don't leave your door or window open. When I was holding a webinar once, the local council started to cut the grass in the park outside my house, and it was really loud. It was one of these petrol grass cutters, but fortunately I had all of the windows and doors closed, so although it made a noise to me, it didn't come across in the webinar too badly. Okay, so what advice can you give people? Sounds like a broadcaster. Test the audio devices. Smile when you speak. And monitor the real-time attentiveness. So go back to panel. So what we see here, 31% people are starting to get interested again. And then we can see who is and who isn't paying attention. That's the little triangle line up there. The thing is that oh, Mark's got a question. So let's see what Mark says. Oh, it's the same one. So what you can do actually is you can mark the questions as answered. So I can sign it to myself. I can send a chat message. I could dismiss Mark Broadbent. I don't think he'd like that very much, so I won't do that. Because it's Mark, we'll set it as a priority to high. There we go. So Mark's put no in. So no, we don't want to dismiss Mark, so we'll leave that one there. So what we could do with this one is assign the question to myself, and then set priority for that one to be in a medium. Yeah. You can mark them as answered as well, so I can remove that line and remove that one, and that's the questions all cleared. How does this by the way, how does the attentive thing work? That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I wonder if I think when I've spoken to people before, what happens is it works out if the GoToWebinar screen is actually the one that has focus on the operating system. So if your focus is on your email or something like that, then GoToWebinar has secondary focus, so I'm guessing it's sending a message back to say secondary focus, something like that. We'll look that up though, that's a good question. Mark, that's what I guessed too. Yes, that's just a guess, I'm sorry, I don't know. But I will look it up, we could go and ask them probably. So I'm going to move that forward. And I'm going to move the control panel back in again. Usually I find what happens is the audience view goes up when I change slides, then it starts to go back down again as when I've rambled on long enough. So there we go. Sounds check. We're aiming for broadcast quality as much as possible. Now here is the preferences screen. I couldn't show you this earlier just because it wouldn't let me show you that one, so I've put in a slide instead. So the main thing here is the audio. Make sure you're using the right audio. Those are drop down lists. I'm using a headset, which is a Microsoft Live Chat, so I've used that one. But what to do is go through all of these particular options and try to work out which audio you're using, whether or not you want the webcam on, how your connection is. Okay, so how to do a sound check. So certainly for the business intelligence chapter, what we do is we do a sound check, usually about a week before the webinar itself. You'd be surprised how many people's microphones suddenly stop working. I once had a speaker who we did the sound check a week before, and then on the day his microphone didn't work, so it was a real pity. What I did instead was he was talking about column store indexes, so I actually dug out a presentation and I presented in column store indexes, which was a bit of a surprise. It was a presentation I got from Microsoft. I did my best and we just rattled through it. But it's just worth checking the microphone and the speakers. We're aiming for broadcast as much as we can. So there we go. So how do we schedule your webinar using GoToWebinar itself? Now I've put the instructions here, but what I'd like to do is I'll show you how to do that. So I'm just going to end the show. So here we have GoToWebinar. So when we log into GoToWebinar, what you see on the right hand side is schedule a webinar. Let's see if it's going to let me do it. Yep. So we're going to give it a title. We're going to call this test webinar for VC Pathways. Now the description goes here. Now what we can do is a series if we want to. We could just do a sequence, one after the other. Now the start date, we could put that in for today. Now one thing to note, and this is something that virtual chapter leaders often do right at the beginning, is they get the time zone wrong. Yeah, so try to be really careful about that. I know it's really hard, and I have done it as well. I get muddled up about it. So what we have here is then we can schedule it. So schedule that for 5 o'clock later. Then it assumes an hour. You've got a little calendar here if you want to change the date. We'll just go for today, it's a test one. So I'm just going to schedule that. So go to webinar, we'll now go off and think about it. So what we can do here is we just can review the settings. So we can add it to the calendar. Now audio, you can use the computer's microphone and voice over IP. We've just used that as default, just simply because it seems to work better. If delegates say to you, I can't hear anything, try to work out if it's just that individual or if it's everybody. If everybody can't hear, then obviously there's an issue there. So you have to make sure you're not muted, just make sure that that little button at the right hand side is green. You can brand the webinar as well. This is something that we tend to do for the virtual chapters. So you just edit and all you do is choose a logo. So I tend to use the past logo in here. You can add in a custom image as well. So as virtual chapters you have your individual logos as well. So you could do that. We can also theme it. So we could have it as forest, a sort of green colour. I tend just to stick to navy or use black. Just really simple. Ruby is it's all dark colours. You could customise it if you wanted. I just tend to stick usually to basic, something that looks good with the virtual chapter and the past logos. So a welcome message. So when they arrive, you can see a welcome message here, and we can put welcome to the virtual. If I could spell that to help as well. Welcome to Virtual Chapter Pathways. Now, I'll just come on to the differences between presenters and organisers. But if you are having a separate presenter, you can add the presenter details in here. So the name, title, organisation. A photograph is nice. People like photographs. I can add in more than one presenter if you want. I'm not going to add a presenter here, so we're just going to save that. So that would be the branding. Okay, so let's go back to managing the webinar. We see the date and time, so we just check that. I've got 5 and 6 PDT. Participants audio, we tend to stick to voice over IP. We've branded it. Now there's co-organisers. So a co-organiser will get a panel like this. So they should be able to start and stop the recording, for example. What a panelist does, a panelist doesn't get all of these items here. So if you don't have all the widgets on the right hand side, it could be because you're a panelist and not an organiser. So a panelist has got the ability to start and stop themselves being muted. They have that control. If you're an attendee, you don't get very many of these things at all. What you tend to get instead is just the ability to mute yourself, but very often the organiser will mute. And the way that you can do that is by muting all. Don't worry, I'm not going to unmute you. I could, that would be funny, but I won't. So we've got some questions here. Here's Wendy. Alright, okay, so Wendy's commenting, I think, about how the attentive thing works. I thought it was how your screen had refreshed on the viewer's screen, but I could be wrong. That could be right, Wendy, I don't know, I'm sorry. I will try to find out and feedback. We're doing another session at the same time next week, so I'll take these questions. So we've got from SillyDev here. Hello SillyDev. When you alter your screen resolution, do you alter your screen resolution when giving a webinar or just rely on tools like Zoom It? I'll show you what I do. I'm just going to get all of these out of the way. Spotify, hello Spotify. So the resolution that I use this. So I use 1024 by 768. I tend to use that one because it's fairly standard. You could use Zoom It, but what I find is, and we'll try it just now, I haven't started Zoom It up. The reason is that sometimes you get a bit of delay when you use Zoom It. That's my own personal thing. So do you see what I mean? There's just that very slight bit of delay. I've got two screens on. so I can tell the difference between me zooming in and it actually updating in your screen. Don't get me wrong, I like Zoom It. What you can do if you're using something like Management Studio, what I tend to do is I make the font in Management Studio really large, or I might set the fonts to large, and the reason for that is just so it actually appears bigger on the screen. So that's just one way to get around it. If something's really detailed and you're using code or you're displaying code, is just make everything larger. I tend to do that anyway. So we've got lots of questions here, I think. Go to questions pane. So I'm going to delete the ones we've answered. If I'm hosting the session, I tend to try and look at the questions as we go along. The reason I do that is at PASS we're very keen to try and encourage new speakers as well as more experienced ones. So sometimes when people hold a virtual chapter session, sometimes it's their very first time speaking. So what I try to do is give them the opportunity to have a practice session, and what I try and do is just to make them comfortable, give them some practice and try to reassure them that me as a VC host, I will do all of this stuff over here. They don't have to do anything other than present the session. Yeah, so this is all about them. So I'm just going to pull that in so you can see the screen again. So that would be sharing your webinar. So you can email me the invitation and I would get it in my email. You could copy the webinar information as well. So when you're sending out your email using the virtual chapter dashboard, you could just copy and paste this information into the webinar, into the email, into the template. We're going to cover that in a later week, so we won't look at that just now. You can see we've got a limit of 10,000, which is great. We never get that many, not in one session anyway. So we've got emails here. You can communicate with the audience using emails and go to webinar, or you can use the PASS chapter dashboard. I tend to use or stick to the PASS chapter dashboard for sending out emails. The reason for that is I can see better if people are unsubscribing, for example. But you can set it automatically so that it will do things like confirm an email to registrants. So I just leave these. As you can see here, I do send a confirmation to registrants using GoToWebinar, just simply because it gives them all the information. Once it's set up once, we can preview it and then it just goes out. It just saves you trouble because as the virtual chapter leader, you've probably got lots of bits to do anyway. So this sort of thing, I tend just to copy and paste from here if I need it. But it's because the automated emails are pretty good and I use those quite heavily. It just means I don't have to worry about it. It's one less thing to worry about. I see another question, so I'm going to have a quick look. Let me see. So I'll just read that out. I hope you can see it. That exclamation mark next to the name seems to appear when someone puts focus on another window away from GoToWebinar. Yep, I think that's true. So I can see that Silly Dev is looking at something else. Not that I'm calling people out for not paying attention. So I'll just delete that. Okay, so let's go back to the session and we will do from the current slide. I'm just going to pull this back in again so you can see it. Alright, that's better. So what information do you need to hand out to people when you send out the email to the virtual chapters? So I tend to ask for 5 things. I ask for the title, I ask for the abstract, I ask for the bio of the speaker, and I ask for a date and I ask for a time. Now you think it would be really simple to get those 5 things, but actually it's not. It can be really hard work because people often need help with abstract setting, which is why at Summit this year they're actually holding abstract clinics, which is a really good idea. So the idea is, the main thing is you're inviting your audience, and what you can do with each session, there's 4 bulleted key messages, and keep in your head what's in it for me. You're trying to explain to people why they should attend. What will they get out of it, and what will the takeaway be? What will they learn, and what's the actionable outcome that they might be able to take based on your virtual chapter session? So it's a balance between, I just give them 4 bullets because people don't have time to read a lot of text, so just give them the headlines. People are busy, so I don't tend to do anything more than that. You can see the difference now that you can see the mouse. So if I get rid of it again, which I do here, it just starts to look better. So getting rid of a mouse is just one of these small things, little touches that makes it look a bit better. So inviting the attendees, we'll talk about marketing. I know that Lana and the team at PASS have been helping people individually to construct the emails with a more marketing pitch. I am not a marketing person, so I tend to pick their brains at any opportunity that I can. So if you are writing emails and you want us just to check the structure, that's something we can help you to do. A few important things is the subject line. I tend to try and send out emails in HTML just because it looks better and it looks more engaging. I use MailChimp and things like that, and basically I copy the HTML from MailChimp and I whack it straight into the dashboard for the mailer. I'll show you how to do that in the week 4. The webinar title. At the moment the clickbait thing seems to be quite popular. So titles like the one thing about SQL Server you didn't know you needed, this sort of thing. I'm sure you can think of more clickbait titles than that, certainly better ones. A brief description, 4 key messages about the session. So who should attend, why is it useful, what is the takeaway, and then the call to action is just to register. Photos are nice, the speaker details, and then the date and the time, and who should attend. Now, I'm just going to end that show because I want to show you a really good website, and it's date and time, timeanddate.com. Okay, so this is a really, really good website. What it can do is it helps you to see what time zone you're in. What I tend to do is you can use the time zone converter, and then that just helps you to work out what's the best time zone, and it gives you I tend to copy and paste the times in different time zones, and I do it in various places around the world. So we might do it for Australia, we might do it for Central Europe, I'll do it for America, and I'll do it for London. The other thing that's quite nice, and I like this feature, is time announcer. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but say for example you want to announce the time for your specific virtual session. So say we name our event as Virtual Chapter Pathway, and we'll call it Jedi. Now that's going to take place next week. I've got a calendar here, and that's going to be taking place on the 15th, and my time is going to be 9 o'clock in the evening in the United Kingdom, yeah. And it's going to last, say, maximum an hour. So we show the result. So what you can see here is a virtual chapter Pathway Jedi, and then what it does do is, you can do a countdown to the event if you want, but what it does do is it gives you the event time right across the world. So we can see in Paris that would be 10 o'clock, Honolulu it would be 10 o'clock in the morning. It's all 24-hour clock. So what you can do is you could copy that URL, and you can see Virtual Chapter Pathway Jedi at the top there. You can copy that, and then what you can do, when you're sending out your email, you can actually put that URL in and say something like check your date and time here. Then it clicks off to this URL and takes them to this page, and it just looks nice because they see immediately they've got some comfort that this is the date and time of their event. So I'll make sure to do that. So let's go back to our presentation. I'm just checking for any questions. Yep, we got a question there. Oh, right, so Mark's suggesting another one, which is, this is the one I use these days for easy side-by-side conversion, worldstimebuddy.com. So yeah, that's another one. I haven't seen that one, but I'll definitely go and take a look. And Paris, hello Paris, says time and date looks good. The BAVC, they also use World Time Buddy, and it lets you add in multiple locations in one window. All right, that's a good tip. I will go and look at that. I should say that the BAVC have done some great work with the social media and the YouTube channel. So Paris and Dan English were both our outstanding volunteers for last month for PASS. So congratulations to them. And I will be looking to pick up any tips and hints from both of them. And that would be cool. Thank you. So final call checklist. I'm just going to move this over a little bit just so you can see better. Oh, questions. Thank you, Jen. All right. No problem, Paris. Here you are. I'm just going to put that back. So to see the rest of the slides, I'm just going to hide the control panel. So hang a sign on your door. I don't do that because I don't really need to, but you might find that useful. I read somewhere that somebody actually had got a bicycle lamp, a small red one, and taped that to his door, and when he's recording he puts the light on, so it feels like it's on air, and that's quite a nice thing. Now what you can do is go to GoToMeeting.com in a wizard, and that allows GoToMeeting to double check your connection and make any optimal connection settings on your computer before you actually hold the webinar. It doesn't work for Macs, but it does work for PCs. So if you go to this URL, so GoToMeeting wizard, let's see if we can find that one. Go to webinar, to meeting, and then I think it's wizard. Let's try that. Yeah. So what you can do here is this it just gives you some tips, and it just helps the webinar run a bit more smoothly if you run that beforehand. It allows GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar to do a bit of fine-tuning before the event itself. So I would recommend you just have a look at that and let it run. Yeah, it just looks at all your connections and lets you know if you've got any problems. It's all about preparation, I think, and that's just another little tip. So you can reboot the computer as well. I mean, what I tend to do is I reboot my router, however you say it in your part of the world, just to clear the internet connection before it starts. Keep all of the applications closed, which I do. Have a glass of water handy. Well, actually, I like a cup of tea, and that's just because I'm British and we do things like that. So turn off the mobile. And my phone flashes when I get tweets, but I try not to look at them. I'm trying desperately because I know that Matt Broadbent's going to make me laugh. So pre-webinar meeting agenda. So this is just, again, just checklists which I took from WeberChat, from the work they did with GoToMeeting, and I can send with GoToWebinar, sorry, and I can share that. It's online. I'll give you the link. So try to arrange to meet your speaker before the session actually starts. They just like to know usually things like how many people are attending. You just do a sound check just in case. So I have 2 pairs of headphones just to be sure. I don't tend to get anybody using a landline, but we could use polls, for example. We'll talk about those next week, but I'll show you those. Set the chat window to organisers and panellists only. Now there's a difference between chat and questions. With chats you can direct it towards individual people. So if you look at chat, you see chat's down here. Oh, where's it gone? There's nothing here, but if I wanted I could send you all a chat message, which I will do now. Hello everyone, to the entire audience. And then sometimes you get back again. But what you can do is just send a question to staff, or you can send it to other organisers as well. So what you can do, which sometimes I do if I'm running a webinar, is I might have GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar running, and then I might have Skype on another laptop, just so that I can, if there's any hosting questions that come up. I can deal with those. Sometimes I do industry analyst webinars as well, and I like to be able to communicate with other analysts and people like that, so we can try and make sure the conversation flows as well as possible for all the attendees. Now what it does do, it says start the webinar 20 minutes before you go live. So what you can do is you press start in the browser, and what you can do, as I said earlier, is pause showing the screen. Yeah. So when you pause, that means it doesn't matter what you do on your laptop, but what the viewers will see, they will just see the actual screen that you've got there. Yeah. So you can see the difference, because there it says that I'm paused. Then it says I'm back on air again. Okay. I'll pull this in so we can see it better. So 1 minute prior to go live, make sure everybody's muted. It sounds silly, but usually it's like a conference call when people say, hey, can you hear me? Can you hear me? And then there's lots of in the background, and so it's just about trying to make sure that that doesn't happen. Don't forget to start recording. I have done that before, which is a bit silly of me, but it's very easily done. So start the event on time. That's probably one of my biggest failings. I do try to make sure, but something usually happens at the last minute. So you hear the webinar lady greeting by saying, the broadcast is about to begin. All attendees are in listen-only mode. And if you do 24-hour hop or something like that, you probably hear her voice quite a bit. She starts at every single one of the sessions. So you welcome everybody. Follow your script. So what I tend to do for the virtual chapters is I will use the chapter deck that Carmen sends out. So what happens for PASS is, if you are a virtual chapter leader or a chapter leader, you get the chapter deck. And I use that just as a way of introducing who PASS are, and also for a way for relaxing the speaker as well. Everything's in flow, and I want to make sure that they are prepared and ready to go. So if you want to see, if you don't get a copy of that, well, the Skype, so we'll ignore that. What I would do is, I had the resource earlier. So if you go to SequelPass website, normally there's the resources available for everyone. So if you go to virtual chapters now, I lost this the other day and I'm very embarrassed to say I couldn't find it. So if we go to local chapters, I want to find the resources. So what I will do is I will go to my own website here, stirrup.com. I changed the look and feel. So I've written a whole pile of stuff there. And here's my virtual chapter session. So what we've got here is the resources page. And I think a lot of people miss this. And I must confess, I only found out about this about last month, which is absolutely shocking, because I should know this, and I didn't know it was here. I'm sure I was told, but nobody waved it in my face, probably, so that I saw it. So the fault was entirely mine. I'm not blaming anyone else. It's my own fault. But there is a resource page, and this is for the... Excuse me. So this is for the chapter leaders. And what we have here is a virtual chapter guidebook. We can open that in the new tab. And this gives you great advice on running your virtual chapter. I won't go through it. I'll leave that for you to have a look at. It's also got some GoToWebinar training here. So that was run by Lana earlier this year. So thank you to Lana and the rest of the team for making that happen. I just thought doing a pathway might help give another option for people to learn more about running the VC. So what you can do, it's got advice in there like marketing your virtual chapter, a webinar and a PowerPoint as well. GoToWebinar training, so there's more information there. But what's really useful, I think, is the chapter deck. And I don't see it here, but it must be there. I just haven't found it yet. So chapter dashboard, and what I tend to do is I will use that, and I'll see if I can find that chapter. Alright, well that's no good, that's going to give me back everything. So chapter decks, so October 2014, I guess it's this one here. Yep. Yes, so if we open that, thank you. I tend to use this at the start of every single virtual chapter session. I may not use all of it. I would change, for example, of some of the dates. So this is for October, so obviously we are on the 8th of October, so all I tend to do is remove the actual rows which are no longer relevant. But this is a great starting point for starting off the virtual chapter. Yeah, so I tend to do that. And it just means that Carmen and the team have done absolutely everything for you, so you don't have to worry too much about generating that every time yourself. So use attendees' names, we've done that a few times. It says relax, have a good time, maintain a sense of humour. I'm well aware that my sense of humour is an acquired taste and not everyone appreciates it. So I try not to be funny, and if I am funny it's purely unintentional. But we'll see how we get on. Some people are just really funny and some people are not. I tend to just go with the flow. Alright, so we'll see if we've got any questions. So if you've got any questions, while you do that, what I'm going to do is show a poll. So what is your experience with GoToWebinar? And I'm going to launch a poll. And so what you can do is you can let me know what your session is. So whether you have never used it at all, whether you're Padawan, whether you're middling, or whether you are Yoda. And what we can see here is I'm going to close the poll. And what we can see in the right hand side here, while you're looking at the poll, I get this little deck which shows me exactly who voted what. So I'm going to share that now, and when you do that you get this nice chart. Now what I should say is before anyone else says it, it doesn't add up to 100%. So some rounding error in there, and I could probably spend an hour talking about how we visualise that, but I won't. I'm sure someone can put it in a really nice pie chart and send it through. And so what we can do is I will hide that now. And then that takes us back to questions. So what I'm going to do is click to open the questions panel. Is that as a user or as a speaker? Good question. I wasn't very clear, was I? So I guess I was thinking about it in terms of a user rather than a speaker. But it's good to see we started using GoToWebinar and it's actually been pretty reliable so far. So click and see whose hands are raised. So Kenneth, we've dealt with that one. And Andy. Okay, so I've only got one person who's got the hands raised, but you can see by grouping them who's got the hands raised and who hasn't. Alright, so if I wanted to make, what I tend to do is when I start the session, I go through the chapter deck. I'm the presenter at that point, but if I want to make someone else the presenter, then say for example, I wanted to make Mark Broadbent here the presenter. What I could do is just right click on him and make the presenter. Make him a presenter or make him a panelist or an organiser. Now, I'm not going to do that now, Mark, so don't worry, don't panic. But what I tend to do is when I've arranged the speaker is I ask them to register at this, register them as a virtual chapter as an attendee, and then I can make them a presenter if I want. So say for example, use my second login, I could make myself a presenter with that one. I could mute myself, which I am muted. I could dismiss myself if I like. So that tends to be the way that I do it. So just right click on it, make them presenter, then that they can share their screen, but we'll probably go through that another time, probably next week. Okay. So just to summarise, see if there's one more question. Yep. Alright, I thought I needed to get some pants on. That will mean different things depending on which side of the Atlantic you're on. I won't elaborate on that any further, but don't worry Mark, we won't be sharing sharing your screen, anything like that. So what's the difference between a panelist and an organiser? That's from Damu. Hello Damu. What we have here is a panelist will only get the ability to mute themselves. They'll get the webcam, they'll get audio, and they'll get dashboard. But I don't think they get attendees, and I don't think they get chat either. So, oh, you mean the American version? All right, okay, that's good. So, the panelist is basically just gets the ability to speak and share their screen, but the organiser gets the ability to start and stop the recording. So the organiser has full control over everything, and other people don't. So that's the difference between the two. So you might have a panelist and they won't be able to control whether it's recorded or not, but the organiser does. So that's really the main difference between the two. And I'll get rid of that one as well. So let's see. We'll go to one last poll. And I'll show you how to set these up. It's not difficult, but have you ever attended any virtual chapter sessions? Yes or no? So I'm going to close that, then I'm going to share it. So I'm really glad that everyone's attended virtual chapter sessions, but the next step is next week we'll go through some more advanced things on GoToWebinar. If you are interested in running a virtual chapter, or you are running one already and got more questions, please do get in touch with me. My email address is Jen Stirrup, and I'll put that up so you can see it. I'll put that up so you can see it, and that would be better. I should have done that the first time. From the current slide. So I'm just going to hide the poll, and you've got my email address there just in case you need it. So next time we'll go through some more advanced things. I see there's another question, and we will have a look at what the question is. Oh, it's gone. Where's it gone? Attendees, polls. There it is, back again. So we've got some raised hands. I click on all, and then we go to the top and we see who's got raised. Oh, right, the hand is gone, so I'm not sure who that is. Never mind. So the next step, we'll look at something that's a bit more advanced next time. This is basically just to get you up and running with GoToMeeting, with GoToWebinar, and to show you how to do things like share your screen, check your audio, and how to check whether people are attentive, and how to record, for example, so you can start and stop the recording here. Tom LeBlanc, hello. We've got an unanswered question. For some reason that's not coming up. All right, thanks. That's great, Tom. No problem. Thank you very much. So it just remains to say thank you all very much for attending. I will put this up on YouTube, and next week I will show you how we can do that. We've got some facilities to do that, and we'll cover some other items as well. So with that, I want to say thank you very much. Any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch, and I hope you, wherever you are in the world, you're having a good morning, a good evening, or a good night. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.